Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Nandalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Ranandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Nandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Padavijaka Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavijaka Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 22nd day of December 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 5 entitled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness, text number 6 on page 234. Sannyasastu mahabaho dukkhamaptama yogataha yoga yukto manir brahma nachedena adhigacchati. Sannyasastu mahabaho dukkhamaptama yogataha yoga yukto manir brahma nachedena adhigacchati. Sannyasastu mahabaho dukkhamaptama yogataha yoga yukto manir brahma nachedena adhigacchati. Right. Sannyasastu mahabaho dukkhamaptama yogataha yoga yukto manir brahma nachedena adhigacchati. Sannyasaha, the renounced order of life. 2. But Mahabaho, Almighty Armed One. Dukkham, distress. Aptum, afflicts one with. Ayogataha, without devotional service. Yoga yuktaha, one engaged in devotional service. Munihi, a thinker. Brahma, the supreme, nachirena, without delay. Adhigachati, attains. Translation. Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. Purport. There are two classes of sannyasis, or persons in the renounced order of life. The Mayavadi sannyasis are engaged in the study of Sankhya philosophy, whereas the Vaishnava sannyasis are engaged in the study of Bhagavatam philosophy, which affords the proper commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. The Mayavadi sannyasis also studied the Vedanta Sutras, but used their own commentary, called Sharirika Bhashya, written by Shankaracharya. The students of the Bhagavad school are engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, according to Pancharatriki regulations, and therefore the Vaishnava sannyasis have multiple engagements in the transcendental service of the Lord. The Vaishnava sannyasis have nothing to do with material activities, and yet they perform various activities in their devotional service to the Lord. But the Mayavadi sannyasis, engaged in the studies of Sankhya and Vedanta and speculation, cannot relish the transcendental service of the Lord. Because their studies become very tedious, they sometimes become tired of Brahman speculation, and thus they take shelter of the Bhagavatam without proper understanding. Consequently, their study of the Srimad Bhagavatam becomes troublesome. Dry speculations and impersonal interpretations by artificial means are all useless for the Mayavadi sannyasis. The Vaishnava sannyasis, who are engaged in devotional service, are happy in the discharge of their transcendental duties, and they have the guarantee of ultimate entrance into the kingdom of God. The Mayavadi sannyasis sometimes fall down from the path of self-realization and again enter into material activities of a philanthropic and altruistic nature, which are nothing but material engagements. Therefore, the conclusion is that those who are engaged in Krishna-conscious activities are better situated than the sannyasis engaged in simple speculation about what is Brahman and what is not Brahman, although they too come to Krishna consciousness after many births. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So Krishna is continuing to speak about the real nature of renunciation. Sannyas without yoga, without being engaged in bhakti yoga, is just a source of suffering. And you can see why. Because the living entity is by nature part and parcel of Krishna. So Krishna is Anandamaya Bhyasat, which means that he's... the word Maya at the end of a word, without long A's, means full of, or composed of even. So Anandamaya means he's always full of bliss. And how is he experiencing that bliss? In all kinds of personal relationships with his devotees. And in the spiritual world, everything is personal, everything is conscious. So he's also relating to the trees, he's relating to the rivers, he's relating to the cows, and of course to speak of the cowherd boys, the cowherd girls, his parents. All of these relationships is where the rasa is, the taste. So he's full of bliss in that. That's what's going on in the spiritual world. Activity, all kinds of activities. So we're part and parcel of Krishna. We're also looking for that ananda, but we've gone astray. We've gone astray, as we'll read shortly in the Bhagavatam class in the morning. There's some very nice purports describing in detail how we've left the spiritual world, fallen from the spiritual world. So, okay, we're part and parcel of Krishna. That means that we're also, by nature, full of ananda. And that ananda is experienced in our relationship with Krishna and with all of his devotees. But basically with Krishna, everything is mediated through Krishna. So, if we the Mayavadis, they understand, as do the Vaishnavas, that the attachment for things in this world is what keeps us bound here, and also covers our knowledge of who we are as spirit souls and so forth. That we share that understanding. That's basic understanding. But what they don't understand is that simply trying to negate those attachments and attraction, the material attachment, cannot make us ultimately happy. We have to, as I love this word, sublimate them. We have to sacralize them. We have to take the very same attraction and turn it to Krishna. Now, there's an intermediate step that has to be taken, and that is you turn that attraction toward the devotees of Krishna. There's I don't know if you were here or you heard this. There's we've already been through the third canto. I think we were already in the fourth canto by the time you moved in. So the third canto has the teachings of Kapila Dev. And he begins his teachings to his mother. Practically, there's a few introductory verses. Then there's 8 verses describing the importance of association with sadhus and the benefits. And that association is not just being with them, but it means hearing from them with what Prabhupada called the ardent hearing, or submissive oral reception. So he has his first verse, is prasangam madadam pashamatmana kavayo vadu saheva sadashukato moksha dvaram apavatam. So right away he's talking about moksha, which is what the Mayavadi is looking for, liberation. So he says the very strong attachment we have to things of this world are like very strong ropes. Ajadam pasham. Pasham is a rope. Ajadam means very strongly built ropes. That's called prasanga. Now prasanga has different meanings, just as the word sangha. We know that the famous word, I'm sure it's in English dictionary by now, satsanga. All the Indians who moved in satsang. So what is that? What is that satsanga? That's sadhu sangha. And sangha has these two meanings. One is association, which is what goes on, what satsanga is all about, associating. But it also means attachment. So, and it's very logical, because what you associate with, you become attached to. So in the first word, okay, this is a call coming in, so I don't need to worry about it. Pasangam ajaram pasham atmana kavayo vadu. So ajaram pasham, these strong attachments that we have, which are like ropes, they need to be turned to the sadhus. In other words, we're attached to so many people on the mundane relationships. We need to somehow turn them toward the sadhus. And if you do that, if you're able to do that, first of all, if you can find a sadhu, or more likely in this age, the sadhu finds you, and if you're somewhat submissive, receptive to the message, then you'll want to associate, and your attachment will be redirected. So then he describes, well, who is the sadhu? I suppose I accept the premise of the first verse, that I want to be liberated from all the suffering in this world. Okay, the formula is that you have to turn your attachment from the things of this world, which are like ropes binding you here, suffering, to the sadhus. Okay, I accept it. Where do I find the sadhus? Then he has 3 verses describing the qualities and activities of the sadhus. So the first quality is tatikshava karunika, suridak sarvadehinam. Is a famous verse. The sadhus is tolerant, is merciful, is the friend of all living beings. Suridak sarvadehinam. Doesn't have enmity toward any living being. And therefore is very peaceful. Shanta. These are the ornaments of a sadhu. He also abides by the scripture. Now, how does he get this way? That's the next verse about devotional service. So Kapila Deva speaking. He's actually Krishna, right? So he says, "Mai unto me, Mai ananyena bhavena bhaktin kurvanti yedvidham." So here's a very important point. The sadhus are made into sadhus. They become sadhus. The essential characteristic is that they perform undeviating devotional service to me. Ananyena bhavena means that unalloyed devotional service. Bhaktim, with great determination. Bhaktim, kurvanti yedudham. And what's the evidence? Matkote chakta karmanas chakta swajana bandhava. That for my sake, they'll give up any activity, and even if needed, if it's an impediment, they'll break the bonds to their friends and family. Mayananya bhavane bhaktim kurni matkrate tyakta karmanas tyakta swajana bandhava. So, okay, so this is what they're doing now. More, and then the third verse gives them more details. Very key verse. Marashaya katam rishta shvinbanti katayanti cha tapandi vavadastapa naitad mankata chetasa. So this addresses the question that Devahuti, asked Kapila Dev first. She approached him and said, she's taking the role of a conditioned soul. And she's saying, my senses are giving me so much trouble, I'm suffering so much, and you're my guide, I expect you as my guru, her son. So, in that regard, he says, and what do? They're hearing and chanting the delightful vibrations about me, the holy name, qualities, pastimes. Marashaya. Those it's a very interesting phrase. Those sound vibrations that have taken shelter of me. Manashaya kata mrishta. Mrishta means very delightful. Shunvanti katayanti. They hear and they repeat. And because of that, they become very absorbed in these sound vibrations, which are not different from me. And so tapandi vivadastapan, the sufferings that come from the misery of this world, Naitan mankata chesa, they don't feel them very much. Because their mind is gone to me. It's already absorbed in me. And we've seen evidence with Prahlad Maharaj and incredible, Haridas Thakur. So, then he says, you have to search out these sadhus, my dear mother, Tahete sadhavak sadhvi, he calls her a female sadhu. She herself is a sadhu, she's sadhavak sadhvi. Sangha dosha, sarva sangha vibhajita. Those sadhus who are free of all material attachments. Sarva sangha vibhajita. This is where the sangha is used in attachment and also association. Sangha stesha tade prata, search them out. Sangha dosha harati te, because by their association you will get rid of all the faults that if you developed in your consciousness from bad association, previous bad association. And this is something we have to recognize. That we're conditioned, conditioning means that we're carrying with us all the influences of all the bad association that we've had in this lifetime and previous lifetimes. It leaves a residue in the mind. So all of that karma and everything, and that's cleansed away by good association and practice. So then comes the most famous verse of the 8. Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti ritkana rasayana kata tajoshanadashu abhavarga vartmani shraddharati bhaktaranukramishati. That by association, and here's the word prasanga again, the first word of the whole Ashtaka was prasangam majarapan. Strong association, powerful, influential association, not just, superficial. So here's satam prasangan, by this kind of strong association with the satams, the sadhus, the devotees. Mama virya samvido, you will hear conversation, vibration about me. Samvido means conversation. Mama virya, my powerful activities. Kapila Dev speaking as incarnation. Bhavanti ritkana rasayana kata. This kata will cause bliss for your ears and the mind. Ritkana for the heart and for the ears. And by employing this mean, Tajoshanat Ashu Abhavarga Vartmani, one will quickly traverse the path of Apavarga, liberation from attachment and from birth and death. And along the way you will develop these things, Shraddha, Rati, and Bhakti, Anukramishati, step by step. So your faith in Krishna, in the Guru, in the process of devotional service, your faith that you can also be empowered to do it. This is another aspect of faith. You say, I have faith in Krishna in the process, but I just can't do it. But that means you don't have faith in Krishna. Because if he's all powerful, he can empower even you. Right? Very important point. This is Maya's trick. Says, I certainly believe in Prabhupada and I believe in this process and everything, but I'm just too conditioned, I can't do it. That's a lack of faith. So he says, Shraddha, Rati, an attraction for Krishna, and Bhakti. This means pure devotion you'll develop step by step. Just by this easy process of coming together, hearing the glorification of Krishna. Now, the next one is pertinent to what we're reading now, especially. because he talks about vairagya. Sannyas without vairagya is just torture. You can imagine. I've taken sannyas, and I won't even look at women, and I'm leading a very austere life as a Mayavadi, right? But I'm not getting a higher taste. It's absolute torture. And Prabhupada describes some of it. They're always reading the Vedanta Sutra, but the Vedanta Sutra is pretty dry in and of itself, unless you have the Bhakti commentary. It's all logic, and so it becomes tedious. It becomes dry speculations and impersonal interpretations are all useless for the Mayavadi sannyasis. They don't really give one the taste for bhakti upon which makes real vairagya possible. Sannyas without vairagya means that you're hankering for all these things, but you can't do it. It's just impossible. So here the next verse describes bhaktiyapaman jata varaga aindriyad drishta shratadman vachananu chintaya chittasya yatto grahane yoga yukto yatishite vrijubir yoga magai. Vrijubir yoga means the easiest process of yoga. You walk in the door, you sit down, and you hear, discussions of Krishna pastime qualities, kirtan, of course, What could be easier than that? You don't have to go a million miles away, there's no restriction, you just do that, and everything else follows. So here's what the result is. Bhaktya puman, by this bhakti process of just hearing, jati viraga gives birth to viraga, detachment. Detachment from what? Drishta bhaktyapaman jata viraga aindriyad drishta shutan. Aindriyad means the attraction to the senses, Both things that you've seen and experienced yourself and that you've just heard about. This means the world of sense gratification we live in, and for those who believe in the Vedic scripture, the worlds of the demigods, the higher planets where you live so long. In other words, there's a whole class of people who follow the karma kanda strictly, very austere. This life they're sacrificing all the time, and performing austerities, with the hope that they'll go to heaven and they'll live, in your loka and enjoy like anything. So they're not really detached, So, but the bhakta, he becomes detached not only from what he can see here and he can experience and long for, but the other world, Shutan, what he's heard about. How? Madvachanano chintaya, by becoming absorbed in the activities of Krishna. And he says, chittasya, in this process we can control the mind, and yatishate rijubir yoga. Rijubir yoga marga means the simple, easy path of yoga, of association. It's all association. Then the final verse, that was 7th verse, the last verse, he says, asevayayam prakate gunana vairag jnanena vairag vajumbitena yogena maya arpitayacha bhaktya mahapatrikatmanam ihavarunde. So he say there that by thus not serving the modes of nature, by serving Krishna, asevayayam prakate gunana jnanena vairag vajumbit, thus developing knowledge and natural vairagya. You see? And by yogena maya arpitayacha bhakta, offering everything to me in bhakti, the result is mam pratyekatmanam. When one realizes me and comes back to God. In other words, that's the whole process. So that's a bit of an expansion here, but it's what Prabhupada is saying. With sannyas without yoga, without bhakti yoga, is dukkha. It causes dukkha. But one who's a real bhakta, yoga yukto, a wise person, attains Brahman, and ultimately, Brahman is Krishna, without delay. So the key is the yoga yukta, being engaged in devotional service to Krishna. Otherwise, it says that Mayavadis sometimes fall down. So this is a constant theme. Whenever he speaks about the Mayavadis, he's going to cite this verse or refer to it, and that is, he says, oh, now I'm forgetting. My brain is not working. Anyway, the verse means that there are others, O Lord, besides your devotees. Ye and ye adabindakshiva muktamaninas tvayastabhava davishuddha buddhaya aruha kuchena padam padantata patantyado anadrita yushmarangriya. This is the demigods praying to Krishna in the womb in chapter 2 of the 10th canto. He's entered from Vasudeva into the Devaki, and all the demigods appear in secret in the dungeon there, and they're all offering these prayers, and this is one of them. And he says, besides your bhaktas, there are others, O lotus-eyed Lord, who think that they're liberated. These are the impersonators, vimukta mananas, but their consciousness or their intelligence is not really purified. Avishuddha buddhaya. And even though they may, by great austerity, a few of them actually rise up to the Brahman platform, aruha kritrena, the word kritrena. You know what an automatopoeia is? It's a word that sounds like what it means. So the Sanskrit is full of those. So English has a lot of those. So the word kritrena is one of them. It means severe austerities, by, suppressing the senses and forcing the mind to think of Brahman, They may rise up. A few may rise up. So Parampadam is the transcendental position. But tatantyadho, they fall down again, because anadra yushmar angriya, they're averse to serving your lotus feet with love. So that's this Mayavadis, they sometimes fall down. And what do? Okay, they'll open a hospital and do that kind of work. But that's ultimately material, if there's no Krishna consciousness in it. Okay, let's go on. Here's Vishuddhatma, this word Vishuddha, which is Avishuddha Buddhaya. This is how you become purified. Yoga yukto Vishuddhatma Vijitatma Jitendriyaha Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma Kovan api nalipyate. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. So here's this concept of working without actually doing anything, Purport: one who is on the path of liberation by Krishna consciousness is very dear to every living being, and every living being is dear to him. This is due to his Krishna consciousness. Such a person cannot think of any living being as separate from Krishna, just as the leaves and branches of a tree are not separate from the tree. He knows very well that by pouring water on the root of the tree, the water will be distributed to all the leaves and branches. Or by supplying food to the stomach, the energy is automatically distributed throughout the body. Because one who works in Krishna consciousness is a servant to all, he is very dear to everyone. And because everyone is satisfied by his work, he is pure in consciousness. Because he's pure in consciousness, his mind is completely controlled. And because his mind is controlled, his senses are also controlled. Because his mind is always fixed on Krishna, there is no chance of his being deviated from Krishna. Nor is there a chance that he will engage his senses in matters other than the service of the Lord. He does not like to hear anything except topics relating to Krishna. He does not like to eat anything which is not offered to Krishna. And he does not wish to go anywhere if Krishna is not involved. Therefore his senses are controlled. A man of controlled senses cannot be offensive to anyone. One may ask, why then was Arjuna offensive in battle to others? Wasn't he in Krishna consciousness? Arjuna was only superficially offensive because, as has already been explained in the 2nd chapter, all the assembled persons on the battlefield would continue to live individually, as the soul cannot be slain. So, spiritually, no one was killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Only their dresses were changed by the order of Krishna, who was personally present. Therefore, Arjuna, while fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was not really fighting at all. He was simply carrying out the orders of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. Such a person is never entangled in the reactions of work. So this idea of, at every moment, this is the Holy Grail that we're aiming for, right? It's important to keep it in mind, even if we can't achieve it right away. To always think of Krishna at every moment. As it said, Smartabhyak satatam Vishnur Vismartavyo najatu chit Sarva vidi nishedaksyur etayoreva kinkara. That one should always remember Vishnu or Krishna, and one should never forget him. All of the Vidi and the Sheda that we learn from the Shastra are servants of these two. Now, this is an interesting verse. I sometimes mention this when I cite this verse, and that is that when I first read it, it seemed to be redundant. And this is something that the Sanskrit is really careful about. All these books, they're not redundant, especially within one verse. So because, ordinarily, just colloquially, if you think, okay, I'm remembering something all the time, then I'm not forgetting it. So why do you say, one should remember Vishnu and not forget him? You know what I'm saying? It seems to be redundant. If you're remembering him, you don't have to worry about forgetting him. So the idea is that there's a process of getting to that point, and that involves the vidhi and the nisheda. Vidhis are the do's. We practice Vaidhi Bhakti because in general vidhi means rules and regulations. We're not doing it just spontaneously. We understand that by following the rules and regulations, having the sense of duty, will come to the point where it's spontaneous. But now it's, Vaidhi Bhakti or sadhana, Vaidhi sadhana Bhakti. So, but in a more strict understanding, there's vidhi, which are the positive rules, what to do, and then there's nisheda, which is what to not do, to avoid. There's two sides to any discipline, right? Just like if you have a disease, there's so many things that you have to do. Stay warm and, get more rest and take these pills, and so many things you have to not do, like eat very rich food or something like that. So both are necessary. So similarly, the vidhi or the do's involve so many things we do to remember Krishna, like chanting Hare Krishna, seeing the deity, so many things. But there's also a whole list of things we need to do that to prevent us from forgetting Krishna, because that's also a whole aspect of it. And in the conditioned state, that's all we're doing. Everything we're spontaneously doing is helping us to forget Krishna. There's no remembrance at all. So both are necessary, right? Just like, okay, Atyahara Priyasa Chabodha Bol Niramaga, this in the Upadeshamrita, the essence of, what do we call it? Something of instruction? Nectar of instruction, yeah, nectar of instruction. So that gives the things that will disrupt your devotional service. These are things that will help you forget Krishna. Too much eating, too much collecting, too much effort for material things, priyasas, too much nonsense talk, or nonsense reading, niyama agraha, not strictly doing, following the programs, or going through the motions and really not paying attention, or not, your mind is elsewhere, associating with materialists, and greed for, even if you don't get it, if you still have a strong desire and greed for material things, that's going to disrupt you. So these are all things we should avoid. They help us to forget Krishna. And then there's all of the things we do, chanting japa, doing this, going here, following. So that's the content of the devotees' activities. So okay, so he's not really fighting at all. So what I was getting at is that, to come to the point, just imagine now that you're moment to moment thinking of Krishna. So that means that you're moment to moment, if you're thinking of Krishna, you have to also be thinking of him as a full person. What does he want me to do right now? Am I doing what I'm doing? So the more that you're actually doing Krishna's will, as you're receiving it through the Shastra and through the Guru, and but this is what Krishna wants you to do, you'll feel attracted to remember Krishna. If you're not doing what he wants to do, then it's very hard to remember him, because it's like conflict. You see, you're trying to do. So you can't go in two directions at once. That's why if you're into sense gratification, you really can't be a devotee. You have to be able to control that. Otherwise, it becomes empty. So so the life of a pure devotee is that from moment to moment he's remembering Krishna, relishing his relation to Krishna, and his activities are all in the line of what he knows Krishna wants him to do. And so, what is he actually doing? Because all the impetuses for his activity and his avoidance of activity his awareness, full awareness of what Krishna wants. In other words, he's tuned in. Krishna's speaking to him, from within and without, like that. So in a sense, he's doing nothing. It's just like a soldier on a battlefield who's just carrying out orders. He's killing so many people, but he doesn't have to feel guilty about it because it's right. Suppose it's a good war, So, but because it's authorized and because he's in line, then everything is in tune. So that's the nature of a pure devotee, is that he's completely detached from all things that are harmful to his Krishna consciousness or that Krishna doesn't want, and he's totally attached and in line with what Krishna wants as he achieves it. That's pure devotion. So in one sense, you'll see in the next couple of verses, actually, if we get them, that he's actually not doing anything. This is the remember we talked about this. Inaction. So many things are going on, but you're not getting any karma. You're simply Krishna's hand. You're acting on Krishna's behalf. And you feel that, that energy of Krishna, it's what he wants. He's empowering you to do your service the more that you get into it, in a way that you couldn't even have imagined. And you see him working all kinds of miracles to make it happen, So that, encourages you and you're situated nicely. So that's what's being described in the next verse. And so some of the qualities, he controls his mind. He's dear to everyone. This is a large part, I think, of what, how book distribution developed and how it goes on, is that this feeling of, because after all, Lord Chaitanya gave us a model of, giving Krishna consciousness to everyone, giving love of Krishna to everyone. And he's so powerful that he could convert someone just by them hearing him chant, But why was it so successful? Because here's someone, love is pouring out, and everybody's attracted to that and affected by it, and lift them all up. So this movement is built on that. We've heard this morning, you're breaking open the storehouse of love of God and giving it to everyone. So it's this quality, even minutely reflected in the devotee, that when you're approaching someone, you're trying to give them a book or trying to give them Krishna, then they sense that they're not trying to exploit me here. They're trying to give me something valuable that they feel has helped them, and the love is coming out. And people are attracted to that. And so that's why they're dear to everyone. The Prabhupada once says, Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, because he's traveling with Prabhupada, everyone loves you, and said, just because I love everyone. It's actually, the great power. That's what drew the first devotees to him, and that was kept drawing hundreds and even thousands of devotees to him, even though they may have had only a indirect, relation. They heard him and they saw pictures and they didn't even have any association. And that's the power of Krishna consciousness. All right, let's go on. Naiva kinchit karomiti yukto manyeta tattvavit pashyan shindvan sprishan jigran ashnan gachan swapanshvasan palapan visujan grinnan unmishan nimishan api indriyan indriyateshu vartanta iti dharayan. A person in divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening, or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. Purport. A person in Krishna consciousness is pure in his existence, and consequently he has nothing to do with any work which depends upon 5 immediate and remote causes: the doer, the work, the situation, the endeavor, and fortune. This is because he is engaged in the loving transcendental service of Krishna. Although he appears to be acting with his body and senses, he is always conscious of his actual position, which is spiritual engagement. In material consciousness, the senses are engaged in sense gratification, but in Krishna consciousness, the senses are engaged in the satisfaction of Krishna's senses. Therefore, the Krishna-conscious person is always free, even though he appears to be engaged in affairs of the senses. Activities such as seeing and hearing are actions of the senses, meant for receiving knowledge, whereas moving, speaking, evacuating, etc., are actions of the senses meant for work. A Krishna-conscious person is never affected by the actions of the senses. He cannot perform any act except in the service of the Lord, because he knows that he is the eternal servitor of the Lord. So this is, an amazing state to being described here. It's to be, conscious, moment to moment here, because you always do, all these different things are happening one after another. And just to try to impress upon you, there's these two categories of senses. You probably there's knowledge acquiring. The Sanskrit term is so much more elegant. Jnanendriya, knowledge senses, knowledge acquiring things. And karmendriya, active senses. So those active senses are not commonly called senses in English. We don't call the hand a sense, but in Sanskrit, in the Bhagavad philosophy, it is. So it's nice to understand those two, because we act with both of them, and both of them need to be engaged in Krishna service. So we have the eyes, the ears, the nose, the touch, the taste, the smell. The knowledge acquiring senses all in the head. It's easy to remember, And then you have the hands, you have the feet, and you have the voice, which is the most important sense for a devotee, really. And the evacuating and generating organ. So those are all of those senses have their place in Krishna service. Most importantly, the hearing, the ear, and the voice. But in any case, when engaging in these things, he's not doing anything, because the impetus for the action is coming from Krishna. Just imagine if you're so tuned into Krishna that everything that you do, every motion of your hand, picking up the phone, whatever, it's all in Krishna's service. So it's an occasion for remembering him. Just like Krishna tries to train us in the 7th chapter to see the world as his expansion of energy. Light of the sun and the moon. Okay, well, we're going to see the sun tomorrow. Well, okay, when the sun comes, I'll think of Krishna. The taste of water, the smell of the fragrance of the earth, and any fragrance, So he's going through the 5 senses there. And as well, the active senses. Anything we do, it should be done. Remember I shared, like he says in the 9th chapter, Yat karoshi, yarashnasi, yarjohosi. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever austerity you perform, do that as an offering unto me, as a service to me. So the more we actually follow those principles, then our very life becomes, helps us to remember Krishna, because it's all engaged in Krishna's service. Now, we're not asking Krishna for anything, we're just trying to do the service, but at the same time, he's reciprocating with the bliss, and with his beauty, the beauty of the name, his wonderful pastimes. If you're really tuned in, then you're there, just by hearing his pastime, you're there in Vrindavan and experiencing. And so even involuntarily, we're not asking for that, but he's giving us the happiness of his name, form, qualities, and pastimes, and everything else. So that's how it works, that the way to really find out, and reach that state of bliss, constant bliss, is to forget all about the bliss. Forget about it. Just try to find out what Krishna wants and do that. Be happy in his happiness. And because we're part and parcel of Krishna, we'll find that makes us the most happy. And the great thing about it is that ultimately it doesn't depend on anything material. Even this material body, is ultimately not necessary, because we have that spiritual body. If you develop the spiritual body, then whether you're physically engaged in dressing the deity, or you're dressing Krishna personally in your spiritual body, it's the same activity. Eventually, everything material has to fall apart. But by that time, hopefully, when our next death, or one of our, nearby deaths that are going to take place in the near future, we'll have developed that spiritual body, and we won't need the physical body anymore. That would be wonderful. So now he's going to start talking about this Brahma Nirvana that comes up maybe in later on in the chapter. But here is Brahmanadaya Karmani. Okay, I'm going to, once again, this number, 858-291-9815. 858-291-9815. If you have any questions or comments, you can text them to that number, and I'll get it on this phone here. We'll try to answer it, if there's anyone out there. Hare Krishna. Text 10. Brahmanyadaya karmani sangam chakva karoti yaha lipyate nasapapena parnapatramivambasa. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Okay. Purport. Here, Brahmani means in Krishna consciousness. The material world is a sum total manifestation of the three modes of material nature, technically called Pradhan. The Vedic hymns, Sarvamiyetad Brahma, Mandukya Upanishad 2, Tasmaretad Brahma, Nama Rupam Annam Chajayate, Mundaka Upanishad 119, and in the Bhagavad Gita 14.3, Mama Yone Mahad Brahma, indicate that everything in the material world is a manifestation of Brahman. And although the effects are differently manifested, they are non-different from the cause. In the Isha Upanishad, it is said that everything is related to the Supreme Brahman or Krishna, and thus everything belongs to him only. One who knows perfectly well that everything belongs to Krishna, that he, Krishna, is the proprietor of everything, and that therefore everything is engaged in the service of the Lord, naturally has nothing to do with the results of his activities, whether virtuous or sinful. And I think that was fixed. What it should say is that one who knows perfectly well that everything belongs to Krishna, that he is the proprietor of everything, and that therefore everything should be engaged in the service of the Lord. Do you see the difference? Should be engaged in the service of the Lord, naturally has nothing to do with the results of his activities, whether virtuous or sinful. Even one's material body, being a gift of the Lord for carrying out a particular type of action, can be engaged in Krishna consciousness. It is then beyond contamination by sinful reactions, exactly as the lotus leaf, though remaining in the water, is not wet. The Lord also says in the Gita 3.30, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasyasya. Resign all works unto me, Krishna. The conclusion is that a person without Krishna consciousness acts according to the concept of the material body and senses, but a person in Krishna consciousness acts according to the knowledge that the body is the property of Krishna, and should therefore be engaged in the service of Krishna. Okay. I think, as Prabhupada says in the purport here, it is then beyond contamination. Okay, even one's material body, being a gift of the Lord for carrying out a particular type of action, can be engaged in Krishna consciousness. It is then beyond contamination by sinful reactions. You see that? Sinful reactions. Now, compared to the translation, one who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful reaction. I'm pretty sure that was fixed also. Yeah, actions and reactions. So this is, again, he's reiterating the same idea. Inaction in action. Inaction meaning action being defined as that act which produces a result, a fruit of action. If that's the understanding, because that's what we're surrounded by. We've been living like that for millions of births. So, still, there's such a thing as he's describing here of action in yoga, in linking up to Krishna, where there is no reaction, and therefore one can say it's not action in the ordinary sense of the word. It looks like the same kind of thing, but it's not, because it's liberating us from all bonds of previous action. So that's what's being described. Brahman, dedicating it all to Brahman, the Supreme Brahman being Krishna. Brahmani, unto the Supreme Personality of God. It probably doesn't leave any doubt. There's not some impersonal Brahman here. This is Supreme Brahman, Param Brahman. So here he's reiterating in text 11. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalad indriyarapi yogina karma kurvanti sangam tyakvatma shuddhaye. The yogis abandoning attachment act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses only for the purpose of purification. Purport: when one acts in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the senses of Krishna, any action, whether of the body, mind, intelligence, or even the senses, is purified of material contamination. There are no material reactions resulting from the activities of a Krishna conscious person. Therefore, purified activities, which are generally called sadachar, can be easily performed by acting in Krishna consciousness. Srila Rupa Goswami, in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 12187, describes this as follows: Iha yasya hare dasye karmana manasagada nikalashrapyavasthasu jivan mukta sauchate. A person acting in Krishna consciousness, or in other words, in the service of Krishna, with his body, mind, intelligence, and words, is a liberated person even within this material world, although he may be engaged in many so-called material activities. Close quote. He has no false ego, for he does not believe that he is this material body, or that he possesses the body. He knows that he is not this body, and that this body does not belong to him. He himself belongs to Krishna, and the body too belongs to Krishna. When he applies everything produced of the body, mind, intelligence, words, life, wealth, etc., whatever he may have within his possession, to Krishna's service, he is at once dovetailed with Krishna. He is at one with Krishna and is devoid of the false ego that leads one to believe that he is the body, etc. This is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada loved to quote this verse. Iha actually means activities. Iha yasya, he whose activities are engaged in the service of Hari, Hare Dase, which one's karmana manasagada. Karmana means the activities of the senses, or maybe the activities of the mind, the words, and all the other senses. Nikalashu means all. Are situated in that if he's situated in that state of serving the Lord with the activities, then he's known as the Jivan Mukta. That phrase means liberated even in this world, even though in the material body he's still liberated. He's said to be. So that's what we're trying to achieve. This verse reminds me of that other verse I've been quoting from the 11th canto. Kayena vacha manasendriyava buddhyatmana vanusita sabhavat karoti yadyat sakalam parasmai narayanayeti samapayetam. He's saying whatever one does with the body, here's the body, kayena, vacha, with the words, with the mind, with the senses, with the intelligence, with the very self, whatever we've gotten in terms of those because of our previous activities. If whatever activities we're performing with them, kadodi yad yad sakalam parasmai, all of them, we think we dedicate. This is a sacrifice to Narayan. This is for Krishna. You see, Narayanati samarpayeta. This is the state of pure devotion. So you can imagine what that means. You know, it's like everything that you're doing. Like when we say the curtains open and we have a kirtan. So we're doing certain things. We're dancing with the feet, maybe clapping with the hands, playing an instrument. Of course, we're singing, seeing the deities. The senses are all engaged like that. So we're not directly thinking, okay, now what I'm moving my eyes. I'm doing it for Krishna. We're just engaged. So, but for the rest of the day, that mood of linking all the senses to Krishna that we have during the kirtan, which is meant for that. That should also prevail. That I'm eating now for Krishna. I'm getting, I'm tying my dhoti. I'm doing it for Krishna. So that I go on. In other words, that moment-to-moment consciousness. That's the pure devotee, and that's why we're enjoined to, Hare Krishna, to chant all the time. To try to remember Krishna directly all the time, and then we become purified very quickly. Okay, so I guess we have no questions again. No comments. All right, we'll continue to offer that service if there's any interest. And tomorrow we'll proceed with text number 12. I'll put a marker here. And hopefully you'll be able to attend tomorrow. It helps to have at least one person. Otherwise, they may not be anybody out there. That would be kind of... Of course, it's forever on YouTube, so maybe there will one day be someone. Hare Krishna. I'm sorry? You're not going to say home? You want to say home? Usually finish. Yeah, okay. One poem? Okay. Barha piram maulao bimbrad vangshi naran atanvan Nana kalpashi sampanno gopastribe sambita Netanandam kuvan Krishna tunswadviksad vikshetha Save kamak sampadyerat asmakam vidyasina. Every syllable is long. This is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, very skilled. Decked with crown of peacock plumes and chanting songs with flute you sing, wearing lovely ornaments while standing in the gopis' ring. Dear most Krishna, eyes delight if you will kindly glance our way. All our heart's desires will be fulfilled on this most blessed day. There you go.